everyone, it's me Luthfia. Today we are going to learn about teaching listening. There are six topics that we are going to learn. Those are integrating four skills, an interactive model of listening, types of spoken language, what makes listening difficult, micro and macro skills of listening, and types of classroom listening performance. Let's start with integrating core skills. Core skills of English inseparable from the others. They always integrate each other, whether speaking, listening, reading, or writing. For example, a pre-reading discussion of a topic to activate schemata followed by either a reading or a writing task. Listening to a spoken lecture or monologue accompanied by note-taking and followed by a discussion. Writing a response to a reading passage. In communicative language learning, the integration of skills is a must, since it has some advantages. The advantages include production and reception are two sides of the same coin. Interaction involves sending and receiving message. By attending primarily to what learners can do with the language, we invite any or all of the four skills that are relevant into the classroom arena. One skill will often reinforce another, and most of our natural language performance entails connection between language and the way we think and feel and act. Let's move to the second topic, an interactive model of using listening comprehension. According to the Clark and Clark 1977, there are 7 types of listening comprehension process. So the process includes first decoding auditory sounds. This process consists of the constituent phrases, clauses, cohesive markers, intonation, and stress pattern of a stream of speech. The second process is determining the function of the speech event. By attending to context and content, for example, one determines whether the speaker wishes to persuade, request, exchange, pleasantries, affirm, deny, inform, and so forth. Thus, the function of the message is inverted. The third process is activating schemata. A lifetime of experiences and knowledge is used to perform cognitive association in order to bring a plausible interpretation of the message. The next process is assigning literal meaning. So a process that involves semantic interpretation. The next process, assigning intended meaning, determining the demand for short or long-term memory. Short-term memory is appropriate in contexts that call for a quick oral response from the hearer. Long-term memory is more common when, say, you are processing information in a lecture. Next process is retaining essential information or meanings. The hearer deletes the form in which the message was originally received and retains important information conceptually. Okay, let's move to the third topic, types of spoken language. There are 2 types of spoken language, monologue and dialogue. Monologue can be divided into 2 types. The first is plain spoken from a written text or note, and the second is spontaneous, impromptu, or unplanned. The dialogue, also the same as monologue, it divided into 2 types, interpersonal, conversational, and transactional or factual. What makes listening difficult? So there are some problems that makes the student feel that learning is difficult. What are they? We go. The first is clustering. The students sometimes try to memorize all of the words or sentences in listening, which is not effective way and makes the listening become difficult. That's why the teachers should help the student to pick up manageable cluster of words. The second is redundancy. Some of the students cannot understand the meaning of the sentences while listening, so that the student feel like listening is difficult. That's why the teacher can use redundancy in the classroom by repeating the information while listening. The third is reduced form. The students sometimes the speakers reduce some forms so that the student have difficulty in gaining the meaning. The fourth, performance variable. Some of native speakers sometimes speak ungrammatically, and it makes the student confused and difficult in listening. The fifth, colloquial language. So what is colloquial language? It is a phrase that is commonly used by native speakers in daily life. If the students are not familiar with the colloquial language, so they will feel difficult in doing listening. Rate of delivery. When native speaker speaks in their normal speed, the student will have difficulty in gaining the meaning. Stress, rhythm, and intonation. Prosodic features of English language are very important for the comprehension because English is stress-time language. English speech can be a terror for some students as one full of syllables comes spilling out between stress point. The next problem is interaction. To learn to listen is also to learn to respond and to continue a chain of listening and responding. Classroom technique that include listening component must at some point include instruction in two-way nature of listening. Student needs to understand that good listeners are good responders. Let's move to the micro and macro scales of listening. And what is the difference? Micro skills are the skills in listening that relate to the discourse level of organization, and these are the micro skills in listening. What about micro skills of listening? The micro skills of listening are the skills that require the student to understand, interpret, and evaluate what they hear. And these are macro skills of listening. Now we will move to types of classroom listening performance. There are some types of classroom listening performance. The first is reactive. Reactive listening. In reactive listening, the student simply listen to the surface structure of an utterance for the purpose of repeating it back to you. Reactive listening focuses on pronunciation. Luna 1991 stated that the role of the listener is merely a tape recorder. The second type is intensive listening. So intensive listening focuses on component phoneme, words, intonation, discourse markers, and etc. And it requires bottom-up skills. Example of intensive listening: students listen for cues in choral or individual trills. Then the teacher repeats a word or sentence several times to imprint it in the student's mind. Then the student listen and notice a specific element such as intonation. The next type is responsive listening. In responsive listening, the student's task is to process the teacher audio immediately and to fashion an appropriate reply. There are some tasks for assessing responsive listening. The first is asking questions. The second is giving comments. The third is seeking clarification. And the fourth is checking comprehension. Next is selective listening. In selective listening, students scan the material selectively. Moreover, the student needs to be able to find important information in a field of potentially distracting information. The material used in selective listening includes speech, media broadcasts, stories, and long conversation. And these are some tasks for assessing selective listening. Listening clues, verbal information transfer, picture cued information transfer, chart completion, and sentence repetition. Extensive listening. It aims to develop a top-down skills. Type of material used in extensive listening includes speech, media broadcast, stories and anecdote, and long conversation. Interactive listening. Interactive listening can include all five types as the learner participates in discussion, debate, conversation, role play, and other pair of group work. It must be integrated with speaking and perhaps other skills in the authentic give and take of communication interchange. Now we will move to the principle of teaching listening. There are some principles in teaching listening. First, include a focus on listening in an integrated skill course. It is easy to adopt a philosophy of just letting students experience language without careful attention to component skills, because oral comprehension itself cannot be overly observed. Teachers sometimes incorrectly assume that the input provided in the classroom will be converted into learners' long-term competence. Use techniques that are stimulating and motivating. Appeal to the listener's personal interests and goals, because background information or schemata is an important factor in listening. Take into full account the experiences, goals, and ability of your student as you design lesson. Utilize authentic language and context. Authentic language and real-world tasks enable students to see the relevance of classroom activity to their long-term communicative goals. Include pre, while, and post-listening technique. So it is better for the teacher to do pre, while, and post-listening technique in the classroom to make the student easier in listening. In the pre-listening, the teacher activate the student knowledge or activate the student's schemata. In the while listening, one that can easily be neglected. The teacher can assume that telling the student simply to listen to the audio that the teacher's talk about to play is sufficient. The last stage or post listening, the teacher check the student's comprehension. Encourage the development of listening strategies. And there are some tips to encourage the development of listening strategy. Those are looking for keywords, looking for nonverbal cues to meaning, predicting a speaker's purpose, associating information with one's existing cognitive structure, guessing at meaning, seeking clarification, and listening for the general gist. That's all about teaching listening. If you have any question or comment, you can drop it in the comment section below. See you in the next video. Goodbye.